Hey, how can I help you, mate? What's going on? But with the absence of love, that's what evil is. That's what evil is. It's the absence of love. We need to infuse it back. And part of that love is to not think about consequences for expressing love and speaking your truth, but doing it because it's right. Love will always do what it knows to be right. And love does not consider consequences, because to consider consequences is to consider the very possibility that you will not do what you know to be right because of consequences. Love will never do that. It does what it knows to be right. It speaks its truth and it stands up for what it believes in. It doesn't consider consequences. It considers consequences inconsequential. The more people do that, the more this world will change. And the more people consider consequences and keep backing down the alleyway to the wall at the end, the more this world will become more extreme than it is now. It's our choice.
We started out this podcast with Julian Assange exposing the war on terror. So we're just going to round up the podcast now with the war on drugs. Whenever I see war on coming out of America, I'm like, oh, something's not right here. What do you think about the war on drugs?
Well, the war on drugs overwhelmingly is a Orwellian inversion. If you're going to run drugs, the best way to do it unsuspected is to do it through an anti-drug agency. It's what with your book and the film. This is what the Clintons and the frickin' Bushes were doing. Father George Bush, one of the major drug runners in America, he was having wars on drugs when he was president. And of course, wars on drugs from the Bush's point of view is a war on the competition, right? Bush was exposed by the San Jose Mercury News, a very proper journalist reporter, for putting crack cocaine on the streets of Los Angeles. And by the way, who attacked the reporter more than the rest of the bloody media in America for actually exposing the story? So drugs are used, one, to create enormous amounts of money to spend on this agenda outside of government traceable funds, and also to absolutely destroy human society. Look at the opioid epidemic in America now. It's destroying vast numbers of people. And so they talk about a war on drugs, but what they are doing is making them circulate. Say what you like about the Taliban, and a lot should be said about the Taliban. When they got control of Afghanistan, the poppy fields disappeared. When the American military sent the boys in, they suddenly went to record levels of poppy production. Because I go into this in the trigger. The ISI, the Pakistan military intelligence, which is very close to the CIA, they were running an operation through Afghanistan to get the source of the drugs, make the drugs, and get the drugs into America. Mohammed Attar was almost certainly flying drugs out of the Venice airport, where he's supposed to be learning to fly. According to the Times of India, he was wired $100,000 on the behest of the head of the Pakistan ISI just before 9/11. So, of course, the media, see, he was wired that money because it was for 9/11. Two questions. Why then aren't you arresting the head of the ISI who wired the money if the money was involved in 9/11? Why was that head of the ISI in Washington, D.C. on September the 11th meeting with CIA representatives? And why has nothing ever happened to him? That money wired was to do with the drugs that Attar was involved in. Attar was just put in the wrong place at the wrong time. He wasn't even on the plane, but he was in the right place to be blamed for it.
So you mentioned these presidents then, through the CIA Black Ops coordinating drugs coming into the country, while ramping up the war on drugs themselves. The cost of this was mass incarceration, hundreds of thousands of non-violent drug possessors going to prison. At the peak of the war on drugs, you had over 500,000 arrests a year for weed possession. When I was in the jail in Arizona, before I got arrested for prisoners of pedophiles, murderers, rapists, when I got in there, the average arrest was a black kid or a Mexican kid with a little bit of weed getting a 2 to 5 year sentence.
Yeah, and what they're doing now, they're pushing legalization of it. Why? Because the corporations are taking it over. Corporations are going to take this whole marijuana thing, legalized marijuana thing, and make an industry of it.
Because it was made illegal in the first place out of San Francisco, the pharmaceutical societies. They didn't want people growing free medicine in their own backyards. No. So now you still can't grow it in your own backyard, but you can buy it from a corporation.
Yeah, and of course they will produce a form which will not be. I mean, even the stuff today, as I understand it, from listening to people who've researched this, it's not the marijuana of the 60s that people are having now. So the corporations have hijacked it. That's what they do. That's why they've hijacked the food supplement industry and synthesized it. And if it's synthetic, it's frickin' useless. But they sell it in their stores at high prices. Oh yeah, I take this good stuff. I only have natural. No, you're having synthetic. It's not natural. If it was natural, it'd be good. So why would a psychopathic, empathy-free zone like Big Pharma be interested in the well-being of the population, whether it's synthetic food supplements and vitamins or marijuana? They wouldn't.
I read the story about this biochemist in the medical profession, and he got prostate cancer. So he's going in to his doctor, and basically he said, your chances of survival after this treatment are very low. He had a friend, a hippie out of San Francisco, female, and she said, get on the cannabis oil. And he got on the cannabis oil, and he went back for the x-ray. Cancer was completely gone.
I know a story just like that. A friend of mine in Canada, quite a well-known guy. I spoke to him, and he was basically in terrible pain with cancer, in bed. And he went on the cannabis oil, and I spoke in Toronto, and I knew he was still alive. I invited him to the event, and I invited him, to come and have a chat beforehand. And I was kind of expecting this frail guy walking in the hotel bar. This guy was absolutely healthy as hell. Cannabis oil from late line cancer, and there's so many people who die, so many people who suffer ongoing who don't have to. If only we were allowed to have all information and possibility, instead of only that which we're allowed to see and allowed to access.
It breaks my heart that hundreds of thousands of people must have died, maybe even millions,
Yep.
because they couldn't get this free medicine. And all these little kids now that have the seizures, they have multiple seizures, they can go into a coma and die. All the people who've died in the past, they're still getting, some of them still getting denied access to the oil. But now these evil, psychopathic politicians who care mostly about votes, they can't go up against these little sick, dying babies. And that's why, I don't know if you're familiar with the case of Charlotte's Web's cannabis oil. That's been used now in America at the state level, the people voting for it, to get it legalized, at least for medicinal purposes.
Yeah, and if you had empathy, you would say, whatever it takes to help this kid. That's what you'd say. You wouldn't say, oh, he breaks this law. Well, the law's freaking nonsense then, isn't it? You would do it. And that's, again, where the absence of love just exposes itself. This is the problem with human society. It's an absence of love. That's it. I heard a song this week. It said, I'd never heard of it before. I think it's quite well known. I don't know much, but I know I love you. Maybe that's all I need to know. And it finished off, it said, I don't know much, but I know I love you. Maybe that's all there is to know. And maybe it is, because from that, everything comes. From the lack of that, something very different, everything comes. The absence of love. That's why human society is as it is. Change that, change everything.
I think that note of love is a perfect one to end the podcast on. If you've enjoyed this interview today, all of David's links are in the description box below this video. Have you got your book coming out on what date is that again?
September the 11th.
What's it called?
It's called The Trigger, The Lie That Changed the World, Who Did It, Who Really Did It, and Why. And it's available for pre-order at the start of August. And I do, so I'm not kind of trying to flog the book, but the pre-orders are very important because I want this book as widely circulated as possible before it hits the mainstream. Because I don't know what's going to happen after that.
Have you got any tours coming up in countries you're not banned from or anywhere else?
No, not at the moment. Because it's getting, at the moment, more and more difficult to find anywhere to speak that's not pulled because of, not protests from the public, quite the opposite. The numbers that come are getting bigger all the time, but by the people that want to silence me, lying about what I'm going to say to the venue. And the venue does not say, hold on, they say you're going to say this. Are you going to say this? No, they just pull it. We find about, quite a number of times, we found out that one of our events is off from the media. The venue has never told us. So it's getting more difficult that way. But I will go back on the road, and I will go back into Australia, because the power of consciousness, the power of love, the power of intent is far more powerful. The power of consciousness is far more powerful than these little boys in short trousers. And so I will go back into Australia. When, we'll see, but I will go back in there.
At the peak of my criminal enterprise, I did have the ability to move people around the world who were banned from certain countries, so we could share some techniques later on. Are there any other ways people out there in YouTube land can support you or help you?
Well, I've got a YouTube channel where there's videos on there being put there all the time. And, it's about sharing the information. People say, what can I do? Well, the very least what you can do is send out to all your friends information you think that they would benefit from seeing, and then, I mean, this movie Renegade, it's about an hour and 40 minutes or so. One of the great encouraging things is the number of people that have contacted me and said that they took friends along or family who were not into this information at all, and it had a massive effect on them, because that's why it was made. So Renegade is a really great way of introducing people for the first time to this information.
And if you are interested in David's books, the first one I read, that was given to me in Max Security, Alice in Wonderland, about 9/11, completely changed my worldview. That was approximately 15 years ago now. I'm sat in the Arizona cell, just sweating, bed sores all over me.
Oh my God.
Got this little stereo, tuning into this radio show called Coast to Coast.
Yes.
Where I heard you getting interviewed back then.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, so got out, continued to read your book, continued to share your information. And to go from that 15 years ago to have my own podcast now, and you being such a huge influence on my life and development, I can't thank you enough.
It's a real pleasure.
Being generous with your time.
You are.
You're talking about love. It's going to have to be
okay.
a situation here, David. Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.